Well, hello folks, Jack here from Peach Guitars. Today we've got our first guest in the new studio. We've got Chris here from Pedal Porn. In fact, all the guys from Pedal Porn have come down to see us today. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming down. We've got obviously a selection of Pedal Porn products to talk about, but before that was some fine playing that we just heard on the introduction there. So if you're unfamiliar with this brand, I think that will be a little bit of an inkling as to what kind of vibe we're going for here. The names of the products kind of give it away a little bit as well. But before we get into the pedals that we're going to talk about, what is the kind of ethos of the brand? Why this is your baby?
Yeah, I mean,
how long's it been a reality?
Well, I mean, sort of going back a bit further from even before the pedals, for me, I've always been a player first and foremost, you know, so it's always been trying to get the tones out of my head onto paper, so to speak, and with that, you can just, if you listen to the music I play and listen to, it's very obvious that then comes out in the pedals, because like I say, you can from the intro, you can just tell exactly what I'm into and what I like, and so I suppose the ethos behind the brand though is just building pedals by players for players, you know.
Yeah, that good old boutique sensibility.
Yeah.
But where did that desire come from though, to actually make your own? Did you have that as long as you remember, where you just kind of tinkered with stuff, or did it come a little bit later into your playing life?
Well, do you know what? I naturally, as a guitar, gearhead, we buy pedals every day. Well, not every day, if we're lucky, every day. But as much as we can, we buy these pedals.
Yeah.
And naturally, you have to sell them, don't you? So if you try new tones and you try new experimentation, and then eventually you thin the herd. So I was selling stuff on Reverb and just going through a lot of these vintage, like old Fuzz faces and different tube screamers and bits and bobs, and I started to get to know what sounded good and what didn't. So I was going through hundreds of them, and in the end, I just knew that there were certain ones that really stuck out, and I wanted to try and encapsulate those into an affordable version for players like myself, because it's often not attainable for guys.
The vintage stuff, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, the vintage stuff, yeah.
And so were you sort of taking stuff apart and messing with circuits as well? Or
this is where guys like Keith come in to our business, because I went around Keith, who used to fix a lot of this old stuff for me. Like a lot of the vintage stuff just was breaking down every week. You know what it's like. And I'd go to his house, and one day I went to his house, and he'd had a little prototype of a Fuzz, which he said, just plug this in for a minute, and I plugged it in, and it just exploded the room, and it was insane. And
in a good way.
Yeah, in a good way, but it was sort of like an eye-opening experience, because I thought, if I could just tweak it a little bit to what I knew in my head would sound a bit more what people would after, we could be onto something. And then literally I said to, we ordered some bits, Keith started making them, and within a few weeks we had the sound that I was like, wow, this is not on the market. So it really was like it naturally just progressed into that, Yeah,
and was this all happening pre-pandemic, or was the pandemic the thing that accelerated your desire to do this?
It was all pre-pandemic, which was fortunate, because things have gone a bit crazy with supply chains and stuff during COVID, and it gets a bit tricky. But yeah, thankfully all before, and I had time to actually play these pedals around the world and actually road test them properly.
Oh, nice, yeah.
Yeah, because it's all right playing it at home, isn't it, in your bedroom? But
that's the way to do it. I mean, even you said today when you came in, this is the first time you got to play loud guitar in a while.
Yeah, and it's not just exhilarating hearing it.
It's not a reality for most people, unfortunately. But I've seen it said in a couple of bits of blurb I've seen of yours that the idea of these pedals, or at least the overdrive, I think, or the boost, is to get that tone at a lower level. Anyway, I think there's a great video of you playing with like 3 or 4 million views on it now of the SRV tone at a low level.
I bet I tried to label it as below TV volume, because and it still can get noisy, but it really does, it gives you those overtones and those glassy loud amp tones, but at small volume if you want it. So,
and how much of I mean, this is maybe more of a design question, but how much of a challenge is that? Because you see so many times, and you get customers saying, well, I've got X and Y pedals and I've got the amp, but it doesn't sound like I expect it to. You plug a tube screamer in or something at a low volume, it doesn't sound anything like what Stevie Ray Vaughan's tube screamer sounds like. So how did you manage to capture that, the vibe of a loud amp with a pedal pushing it, into a low volume setup?
Yeah, it was a lot of as me and Keith say, actually, it's like I'm always just saying, can you just tweak it this? And I do his head in. I really do rack his brains. But it's, if you've got the right team around you, they've got that knowledge in there. Me trying to cram that in over 100 years of like combined experience, I haven't got that time because I'm just trying to play guitar, But
like you said at first off, when you've got the ideas and you just want to get them out there on paper, so to speak, it's important to have the right vehicle for that, and people who know how to make that into a reality.
Because and this is the funny thing, a lot of if you look at a lot of people that own pedal brands and stuff, a lot of them are engineers, but they might not necessarily have the guitar playing experience or whatever it is. But they have got the engineering background, and so if I can tap into that while knowing what guys like me and you want from pedals, it's a good relationship.
Definitely, that's the dynamic you want.
Definitely.
Sure, yeah. So what you'll have heard in the introduction there was a little bit of the fuzz. What's the name of the fuzz, by the way? Because it just says pedal porn on it.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have heard of Henning Pauly.
Yeah.
He when he did a demo of this, he was just like, very inventive guys. This is called the Fuzz. It's just Fuzz.
The Fuzz.
And he's like ripping.
Say no more than that.
Yeah. On that note, actually, it was because of guys like Scott McKeon and Jesse Davey just having their like Scott McKeon Fuzz and Jesse Davey Fuzz. I wanted it to be on a possible, it could be potentially one day the end all fuzz. Hopefully, who knows? But it's
big claim.
I'm not
maybe
saying
it is.
But I mean, it's one of those things where if you've got a name where it's like the monkey fuzz or something random, it's, I don't know. I feel like it's got less chance of prevailing.
Not quite as ubiquitous as the the fuzz, you say, the fuzz to end all fuzzes. But so what's kind of the reference point for it? I'm guessing 2 controls and that tone and that clean up ability on the volume. It's very fuzz face-ish.
Definitely,
Is that kind of the reference point?
Definitely, and again, talking about buying and selling stuff for a while back, there's a guy called Cesar Diaz who used to be Steve Ray Vaughan's guitar tech, and he built a special custom modified fuzz face for Steve Ray Vaughan and actually put that circuit inside his rehoused fuzz face shell. So what you're hearing is when you're seeing Steve Ray Vaughan using a fuzz face, it's not actually an unmodded fuzz face, it is this Cesar Diaz Texas square face, which is what they called it. And I noticed on those designs, when you rolled back the guitar's volume knob, it really gave you that glassy, crystal clean bite. And a lot of fuzz faces, some of them did do it, but not to the extent that I was liking.
Right.
So we really tried to tap into that, as opposed to just a straight fuzz face. We went down the Texas square face route for the cloning. Well,
So is it germanium or silicon?
It's actually silicon. Yeah.
Okay. And that's of the two, that's not the one that's known to clean up that well.
A lot of people say that. They always like, why don't you go down the germanium route? But we did a lot of testing, and it seemed that the silicon, we got what we wanted out of that, both on the cleanup and when rolling it up. You get that really fat sound.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really distinguish between the fatter germanium sound and ours in the testing. So I was like, if we can get away with using silicon, which is temperature tolerant as well.
Yeah, more stable.
Yeah, totally. You're getting best of both worlds, really. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's what you want. You want practicality, as well as the tones that everyone seems to be going for. So that's what the fuzz does. Should we hear a little bit more of it?
Sure.
If you don't mind, yeah, I'll flick it back on. That's a good noise. But bang.
Yeah, there's an explosion. But I'll talk about I'll start off with a glassy sort of like bite that I was talking about a second ago. So
yeah.
Right, and
let's turn it back up again. So
that's one thing. By the way, on a lot of these old quirky units. Like when you roll down the volume to 0, it goes crazy. But that's just part of the.
Yeah, so let's just assure everybody that that's not broken. That's by design.
Yeah, honestly, I get so many emails saying, "Oh, I've rolled it down to 0," but I was like, on all the vintage Fuzz faces I've had, it does the same, and I've checked it, and it's part of the Mojo, I suppose.
It's so weird though, isn't it, that something like that ever caught on with guitar players, and yet it did.
Yeah.
And continues to this day. So that's what a fuzz should sound like. It's the fuzz to end all fuzz, as you said so yourself.
I never said that.
That'll be the title of this video. So what else have we got? So the Texas Twang is the one that I've seen more frequently.
Yeah, it seems to be our flagship, sort of most bestseller actually. It's a funny one because at heart it's actually a treble booster, but people sort of see it as an overdrive more than anything because it sounds like one in the right context. But it's not. Again, carrying on from the fuzz, what we're talking about with the volume knob, the Texan Twang really is like it's interactive with your guitar. It's not a straight overdrive because it's not another Tube Screamer clone. Basically, it's got a real sort of interactive feel with the glassy cleanup again, and even more glassy on the high setting. It goes really crystal clean in a way that I've never really heard on another overdrive, if I'm honest. Yeah.
Right. So that control on the right, is that just a rotary switch, high, mid, and low?
That's right. Yeah.
And then just an overall level that reduces the volume.
That's right, and it is best to if you can get the amp cooking a bit so it really goes crazy. But yeah, the frequency divider, the rotary switch is there's a lot of different varying tones that you can get from each setting really, and even on the low sound you can get some fuzz-esque tones.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't really say it's made for that. But
okay.
Yeah.
Well, so it's in the mid. Is that right? Yeah, in the mid mode at the moment, I think.
Yeah.
Let's see what it does.
Sure. Yeah. So again, I'll start off with the volume back top
down.
of it.
Okay. Nice.
Random playing, but
let's just hear a couple. I'll flick to the low mode. Then you mentioned that can kind of get into a little bit of fuzzy.
yeah, he's
fat.
Fat, yeah,
fat. And then let's hear the high, and then we'll talk about them as well. So
nice one.
This is the high mode.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh man.
I'll flick that off. So I'll tell you what's interesting straight off for me is that when you think of the components that make up a typical blues tone or Stevie Ray tone, if you want to call it that, a treble booster is never on that list. You know, when everyone thinks of tube screamer, which in essence is the exact opposite. Rounds off all the treble, rounds off the bass, pushes out the sort of the low mids and compresses.
Yeah.
That's almost the polar opposite of that, and yet it sounds dead on. So Mythbusters right here, because that's not what you would expect, and yet it still delivers that tone. But like you said, very important to point out, the amp has to be a part of that equation.
Yeah, definitely. It's not just, you know, plug in and it's great, but it's honestly, I spend so much time on Facebook answering people saying exactly what you're saying. They're like, "Oh, Steve, you never used a treble booster," and I'm like, "Oh, in fact, there's something that I could go down a route here, and I don't want to cause any, like, you know, conspiracy sort of thing." But
do it.
Caesar Diaz, his guitar tech, he designed the original one of this, like it's called the Texas Ranger, and he designed it. And I wouldn't be surprised if he incorporated some of these mods into like the Vibrato mods and all the bits and bobs he did. It's like, for me it just sounds so similar to what I'm hearing on Stevie's sound sometimes that I'm like, who knows, that we don't know what was going on some of those shows and stuff, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to cause any, like, I'm not trying to rewrite history, but I don't know, there's something about it. I just think
everyone's got their own history books in a way when it comes to this topic, but the proof is in the fact that it sounds, you know, you're playing in that kind of style, but the tone works for it, and yet you could take this pedal and the fuzz as well and play in a totally different style.
Yeah, but we see so many cool players nowadays on Instagram, like playing with like P90 pickups, playing heavy rock with this stuff. It's like, I personally push the Stevie side of it because it's where my heart lies. But yeah, it's really versatile stuff, you know.
Yeah, and it comes down to the fact that they are instruments, or they're extensions of your instrument in a way. You know, there's such simple things, but when you can manipulate them in such a way, you can get them to do whatever it is that you want the guitar to do.
That's right.
So that's very important.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm hoping that as I was playing it, sort of coming through, it's just such an interactive like relationship with the pedals. It's, you know, you can set and forget them, but you're really riding that volume control, which gives you so many varying tones in between.
Yeah.
You can go from glassy to like crazy fat within, you know,
yeah, exactly. Just like it changes your playing style as well, doesn't it? Because you constantly, your pinky is always veering towards the control to make the changes.
Definitely, yeah.
So the last one to talk about is by far the most imposing and was the most recent to turn up here. I haven't played one of these yet. Gypsy Vibe. So I don't need to explain that really, do I? Your take on a Univibe. What was it that you wanted to receive out of this type of style of pedal? Because there's several other vibes out there that all do slightly different things.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
Was there a specific benchmark reference point for this one for you?
Yeah, it's a lot of people ask me like, well, you know, what? It's just another vibe. What's special about yours? But I always say to them, like, I went through so many vintage ones, and a lot of them didn't actually sound that great. You know, some of them had sounded good, but there was one that I found, and it had just the best magic I've ever heard. And I know this stuff is components, and you shouldn't get too hit up on it, but it was literally magical. It was like I couldn't get around that fact, and I again took it to Keith, and we literally reverse engineered every part in it and worked out why that original sounded magical. And by the way, this one that I had looked like an absolute state. It actually looks. It didn't have the faceplate on it, so it looked like an old World War II like bomb or something.
Oh, right.
It was insane. It was like a military green colour. It's crazy. But it sounded beautiful, and we managed to. It had something about it, but more than anything, it was the throb that came through, and that's why we actually labelled the intensity labelling as that.
As
because,
throb.
Yeah, that's it, because it has so much more than what I'm normally hearing on modern units and stuff. And so really, for me, it just truly captures the sound, at least of the one I really loved. It's just so thick and frobby and like all these weird words. Juicy, yeah.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So it's on the chorus mode right now.
Big pop.
That's really a three-dimensional thing. Like a lot of effect pedals kind of sound like they sit on top of the tone, whereas that feels like it's everywhere. It's underneath the tone. It's sort of lifting it up and pulling it back, almost like a tremolo. And it's kind of sounds almost like, you know, you hear those old Fender brownface amps with the harmonic tremolo. It's got that kind of just sitting in the room with it. It's got that kind of feel. I imagine under the fingers, it's got the same thing. So was the feel the thing that you were going for more so than the actual tone, would you say?
Yeah, definitely, because like I say, some of them do, you sort of plug some on and it sounds like, yeah, it's just a layer over it, but this really becomes part of the amp. And that's the other thing actually with the vintage one. You can actually hear the amp speaker thumping away. It's like really like, almost like a heartbeat. And that's what and so we really made sure that ours, you can actually like hear it like thumping in the background, like now it's going like, it's literally like a pulse, you know?
Yeah.
And it's, it has to have that over, because a lot of them can be quite weak sounding, like even old ones. So just really trying to get that zooped up sort of sound.
That strength of the feel.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Hey, very nice.
My playing is random today, I'm sorry.
That's what happens when you get in front of cameras sometimes. But no, it sounds fantastic though. So what you'll have heard there is the thing that no one ever talks about with Univibes, which is the non-swirly sound, the vibrato mode. And I just wanted to explore that with Chris because, like I said, that's the thing that always gets neglected. It's also the thing that is kind of gives the most tone shaping. I feel like it really thickens up the tone, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, you set that kind of a little bit more drastic, you know, faster speed.
Yeah.
But when you use it at lower settings, does it still have that same sort of thickening effect?
Well, do you know, it's funny you said that, because I always sort of thought when I was a bit younger, I was like, one of the most beautiful sounds in the world is the vibrato side on a Univibe. And then even now I'm neglecting it. It's just like, I don't know what happens, it just gets buried, but there's something about, especially the slower side, it's just so beautiful. In fact, I might even just try and show you a bit now if that's okay.
So it's slow the speed down and turn the throb down?
Yeah. That's nice, yeah. Just if I just play some basic chords, it's like... It's just mellow,
sounds
isn't
good,
it?
doesn't it? Yeah.
I like the sound. It's a real, no one really, like I say, no one really talks about it, but it's just got a nice.
Yeah, I don't know why that is, because I personally, that's my preferred side of that style of pedal. I think the vibrato sounds, it's just got that fatness to it, and it's a little bit more sort of intricate in a way. But you got both. You get the option of both.
Yeah.
So the last thing I wanted to ask you really was, you several times throughout this you talked about the sort of inconsistency of the old pedals, and you had to fumble through a bunch to find what you like.
Yeah.
How have you managed to achieve that consistency now?
Well, this is for all three pedals, this is the one thing that we said from the start. If we don't get that consistency, we're not going to bother, because there's no point in someone hearing a good demo and then getting it and they're like, oh, it's not sounding like I thought it would.
Yeah.
With modern components, once you get the formula there, the tolerance between component, not tolerance, is quite there's not as much disparity as there once was. So we can actually get a consistent product now, which is great. But again, a lot of the work, you have to get a good circuit. If you've got a good circuit, then everything else
just follows it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, but again, we've got some good a good stock of, like, we can make these for a while without having to worry about having to find more components. But it was a challenge getting it to work at the start. You know, it's a lot of R&D involved.
Yeah. Well, it obviously works, but I still think, you know, the people out there who will go nuts over this stuff will still probably buy 3 and pick their favourite of the 3 anyway. You know, there'll still be
if they did it, I feel like
people will still magic up inconsistencies in their head and you know, determine that one sounds better than the other, even though, as Chris said, they're all the same. But you know, if you want to buy 3 Gypsy Vibes, then do it, because you'll probably prefer one over the other.
Well, Paul, one of our engineers, said before, when he's testing them, he can hear differences in the fuzzes, and I'm like, I don't know if you can. I think you've
not at that volume.
Yeah,
I don't think. You know, maybe if it's under a microphone in a studio and stuff, but
definitely.
It's just 3 great sounding pedals. So you know, congratulations on a really cool line.
Well, thanks for having us. It's so funny because again, our engineer Paul was like, we just one day if we can get stocked in Peach guitars, that would be cool. And then literally a week or 2 later, it happened, and I was like, this is crazy. So we're stoked to be.
I think if there was ever going to be a place that this stuff is at home, it's here, because you guys know what we tend to do. So
well, as soon as I walked in and I saw the statue of like the Steve, or the guy with this, you know, Stevie Stratton, I was like, mate, this is home for us, you know.
Yeah, that was actually modelled after John's body, I believe.
Well, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna have a proper look at that later now.
Not really. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, Chris, and to all the guys who came down today to talk us through all the different technicalities of it. But if you guys want to find out more info about the pedal porn stuff, it's all on our website, which is linked down below in the description, peachguitars.com. You can find out everything you want to know about these and pick one up for yourselves, or pick up 3 for yourselves as well. Why not? So yeah, thanks a lot, Chris.
Thanks a lot, man.
Great to speak to you. Thanks for watching, guys. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.